Hi, I'm Mary, and I'm going to show you the Dolby Atmos integration in the Fairlight page of DaVinci Resolve 17. Let's get started. Right here I have an empty project, and I'm going to go in and actually make a brand new project right here with nothing in it, not even a timeline, and I'm just going to call this Dolby Atmos, just so we have a name for that project. And I'm going to hide DaVinci Resolve for a moment and come up here to the actual media that we're going to be working with. We have a video clip with a stereo soundtrack, and then we also have a broadcast wave file, which happens to be an ADM file, a Dolby Atmos master file. We'll be working with both of those right now in the Fairlight page. So I'm going to go back to Fairlight, and what I want to do is just import those two clips. So I'm going to right-click, Import Media. We'll go over to that folder I was just on, and we'll select both of those clips and bring those into my project, and here they are. Now if I select the first clip, you'll notice that is the movie clip, and there is the stereo soundtrack as mentioned. And if I select this file, you'll see that this is actually the broadcast wave file, which is also an ADM, and as you can see, that is a Dolby Atmos master file. It's a full master file right there. You can see it in the preview player, and you can also find out information about a clip over here in the metadata panel. So if I come over to the right and select metadata, you'll notice that it will show me the information about any selected clip. At this point, I can see this is a Dolby Atmos file. And if I select the original, you'll see that that is just an H.264 with a 2-channel stereo file. So those are the materials that we'll be working with for this lesson. I'm going to go ahead and hide that metadata now. And what I'd like to do first is just bring over the video clip. Now, I don't even have a timeline yet, and one of the things you can do in the Fairlight page is you can actually just drag and drop a clip right into that empty space where there would be a timeline, and it will create it for you and match the media that you're bringing in. Now, I'd also like to make sure I'm showing my video track, so I'm going to come up here to my timeline view options and make sure the video track is showing. And that way, by selecting that, when I bring in the clip, I'll get both the video and audio at the same time. So I'm just going to take this. I also want to make sure my snapping is turned on, and that way it will start right at the very beginning of the timeline. I'll grab that video clip and just drag it over, and it will automatically create the timeline with both the video and audio tracks, as you can see. I'm going to hit Shift-Z to fit it to the window, and as you can see right here, I can click anywhere, and this is the file with the stereo sound, 2-channel stereo sound. I can play it back. And that is the file that I just imported. Now, if you look over here on the right, in the mixer, you're going to see that it shows a stereo track with 2 channels, and you'll also see the bus. There's one bus. There's every project and every timeline has to have at least one output bus, so automatically a stereo bus was created to match the media that I brought into the timeline. Now watch what happens to that though if I bring in this master file right here. Now this is the ADM master file, and if I bring that down to the timeline, I'm just going to drag and drop it to the next track. It will automatically create a 714 track for me. I can zoom in on that so you can see a little bit better. As you can see, this is a 714 format. That means this is the master file right there in my timeline. And if you look at my busing over here in my, right here in the mixer, you'll see that it's now playing back all of those channels. And so automatically it's switched it over to a Dolby Atmos bus for output and playback. And so one of the reasons that works so well is because we have the Dolby Atmos renderer built right into DaVinci Resolve. So if you're using DaVinci Resolve Studio, you have full access to the internal Dolby Atmos renderer, which allows you to play back a Atmos master file, and it will also allow you to generate or create your own Dolby Atmos content as well. And so we now have this playing back in the timeline. Let's take a closer look. I'm just going to compress these a little bit and expand that track. And when I do that, you can see that there's actually a badge on the right there on the left side of all of those channels, and that shows you that this is a Dolby Atmos master file. That's what that logo says, or that badge. And so I can actually see this is the entire clip right here, and I can play it back as is. I'm going to go ahead and mute that stereo track, and then I can play this one back. Now, the one thing I haven't done is I haven't tried to sync this to the video, and I can see, Shift Z, if I look, I can see that the video and audio tracks don't exactly line up here, and that's because they are a different duration. And so one of the things I need to do is just resync these, so I'll just select both of the stereo and the video that goes with it, and I'm just going to move those and snap them to the end. There we go, and that way they will be in sync. Now you're probably wondering, how do I know that without listening or looking? It's because I've done this a couple of times. And I also know that there is a 2-pop at the beginning of this. You hear that 2-pop? That tells me that the picture start is 2 seconds later. And so I just need to be on that first frame, move over by 2 seconds, shift right arrow, and I can see that this is starting exactly 2 seconds later. So that is how I know that it is in sync, and then I could play this back. And there it is. It's playing back right there within Resolve.
Dolby Atmos.
In order to use Dolby Atmos, again, you do have to be working with DaVinci Resolve Studio, but that then gives you full access to not only play back Dolby Atmos masters in your timeline, but also to be able to generate new or export new master files as well. So now that I have this set up, let's see what else we can do with this. We can make our down mixes right now just by going in there and bouncing out or rendering out a down mix. I can do that right in the timeline if I need to. So the other thing we can do is change the playback format so that at any time I can change this. Let's say I only have stereo speakers, but I want to be able to listen to it. So instead of having it as a 714 file, I could just change it to stereo. It will still be a Dolby Atmos master file. I'm not actually changing any of the contents within, and it is still fully expandable to any system that I need. But at the moment, I can change it to whatever my playback is. And so just to show you how that works, I'm going to go ahead and change this to stereo. And when I do that, the Dolby Atmos renderer, the internal renderer, will go ahead and then just play it back as stereo. How do I do that? I'm just going to come over to the clip itself, right-click on that clip, and change those clip attributes. So if I go to clip attributes, I can now change the playback format. So right now it says Dolby Atmos 714, and instead I'll change that to stereo. And when I do that, even though it's still a master file, and as you can see, it still has the the Dolby badge, and I know it's in stereo. But if I change my track now to stereo, it's going to play it back as a stereo down mix. Okay, so I'll be able to listen to it in my speakers, and I'm not diminishing it at all. If I go to export it, it will still work perfectly. Okay, so let me make sure I have those in sync. There we go. And so that's that I can actually do something with this. I can render this out right now by just bouncing this file to a new layer, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to first mark the clip. I'll use my range tool and mark it, and then I'm going to come up here to the timeline menu and choose to bounce the selected track to a new layer. And anytime I do that, it's basically going to bounce this into a layer sitting on top of the original file. So I'm bouncing out a stereo down mix of my Dolby Atmos master right now. And this is just a 2-channel down mix that I could then send out, or someone could be using for localization or whatever they might need it for on a system that may not be Dolby Atmos. And so if you look, the bounced file is now in my media pool, and you can see it right in the timeline. Let me just zoom in on that. And you can see that's what the stereo down mix looks like. I could then play this back, and it should sound pretty good. There it is. And because it's over here in the media pool, I can also rename this. Now, one thing about naming conventions is obviously you don't ever want to rename your file names, because that makes things so that they won't reconnect to the rest of the project and so on. But what we can do in DaVinci Resolve is you can actually give things clip names, which is like a nickname, where you can give it a name that's more familiar, that works for you, and then you can actually export it using that nickname or the clip name, and you can also then see it that way in the timeline as well. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. We're going to take this bounce file, and I'm just going to name this NF for Nature's Fury, and then stereo down mix. There we go. So it has a name that I actually means something to me. Now in the timeline, it still has the original name, but I could show this clip name instead by going up to the Fairlight menu, down to the bottom where it says View Clip Info Display, right there. And then I can choose what I'd like that info to be, and I'm just going to change it from name to clip name. And so by doing that, now it's going to show the clip name not only in the media pool, but if you look in the timeline, you'll see that it's now showing the stereo downmix. So it's got the name that I just gave it. So that is one thing I can do with this. Now something else, I don't have to leave this sitting here. I could actually just drag this right off of my master file and just stick it right here in the timeline if I want to. Now I still have that original stereo file, which I really don't need right now. So what I could do is just hide that track. Any tracks you don't need to see at any time, we can hide it. It's already been muted. And if you want to hide a track, you just go into the index to do that. So I'm going to hide my media pool first, and I'm going to go to my index, and I'm going to choose that first audio track and just hide it. So I can make at any time a track hide or show by just clicking on the visibility icon right there in the tracks list. So right here you can see in the timeline I have my Dolby Atmos master file, which is playing back as stereo right now, and then below it I have my downmix. So next I want to actually make a 5.1 downmix as well. And so I'm going to go back up to my Dolby Atmos master, that track, and I'm going to change the track type to 5.1. Okay, there we go. So I just made it into a 5.1. I need this downmix format for localization so that I can show or hide the let's say the center channel where the dialogue is, so that it'll be easier for dubbing and maybe replacing the music and things like that. So how do I turn this back into a 5.1? I just changed the format again in clip attributes. Keep in mind that at any time with any clip, you can change the attributes to another format, and you can also change your tracks at any time and your buses to whatever format you need while you work. So at this point, I'm just going to right click on this and go to clip attributes and change it from stereo to 5.1. It automatically is going to bring up those channels, and click OK. And now I have a 5.1 version of the Dolby Atmos master file. Keep in mind that it's just playing back through the Dolby Atmos renderer. So whatever format I have, it's automatically doing all that work, all those algorithms and everything that's downmixing it as I need to is happening all under the hood. And so now I'd like to bounce this as well. So once again, I do the same thing. I need to just mark it first, which I'll use my range tool to easily mark that clip. Go back to my arrow tool, and then I'm going to go to the timeline menu and say bounce selected track to new layer. And once again, it's going to bounce a downmix for me. And this time I'd like to actually check this downmix. Let's say we need to make sure that this 5.1 downmix is good for loudness, good for Netflix, for example. So what we'll do is we'll do an analysis on it, offline analysis to check the levels. And then if they're not quite right, we can run some normalization for the same loudness standard to make sure it's right. And then we can even export that out, knowing that it's in the correct levels. So I'll show you that in just 1 second. All right, so we just finished that downmix. Let me come over to, I'm going to hide my index, go back to the media pool, and you can see the downmix was just created. I can see it in my media pool right there. It needs a name. So I'll go ahead and name this NF for Nature's Fury 5.1 downmix. There we go. And so now I have both of those downmixes, and notice that it automatically changed the name as well right here in the timeline. So I can take that downmix, I'm actually going to drag it down to a lower track. And so I have not only the original Dolby Atmos master file right here in the timeline, but I also have now a stereo and a 5.1 downmix, and I didn't have to do any extra work for that. I could even name these here if I wanted to in the tracks, or by naming the clip names, you know, I know exactly what I was working with. Now let's say we wanted to export these or bounce these out for someone else to work with outside of the system. Well, I can do that as well. I can just right click on, let's say, my stereo downmix, and right click and choose bounce clip to files. And what that will do is that will allow me to bounce that out as a file. I can put it anywhere I need to. I'll put this in a new folder on my desktop. Downmixes. There we go. And it will just use the clip name. It will output it as either mono files or multi-channel files. I'll go ahead and output it as multi-channel files, and bounce, and done. That one's already sitting there. Now before I export or bounce my 5.1, I'd like to check the loudness on that, make sure that the levels are good. So let's go ahead and condense all of these tracks. I'm just going to stretch this one out a little bit more so I can see it better. Again, this is a down mix that I made from a Dolby Atmos master file, and I'm just going to right click on this and choose Analyze Audio Levels. And if you look, Analyze Audio Levels is an offline analysis, so I will go ahead and click on that. Come back out, and I can choose what loudness standard I want to use. And like I said, I think I'll try Netflix for this one just as an example. So I'll set it to Netflix, which also includes dialogue intelligence. It will see how much dialogue's in there, and if there is over 20%, then it's going to weight it for dialogue. So go ahead and click Analysis. It's just going to run that through real quick, and we'll see if it's within the target levels or if it needs to be adjusted. And as you can see, it needs a little bit of adjustments. There's 21% dialogue. The true peak is higher than that -2 dB full scale. And also we have our loudness is a little too hot as well. No problem at all. What we're going to do is we're going to do the next step, as I mentioned before, is I'll just right click on this, come up to Normalize Audio Levels. So with Normalize Audio Levels, I can actually set which loudness standard or which peak targets that I want to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and click Normalize Audio Levels. And as you can see, I'll choose Netflix from the bottom of that list. There we go. And so now it's going to be doing the Netflix loudness, which will be the target levels -2 decibels true peak. And we also have target loudness of -27. It has to meet both of those targets. So I'll click Normalize. It'll do that work for me. And once that's finished, now it should have made the adjustments needed for this particular clip. I'm going to go back in and do my analysis one more time for Netflix. It's running the analysis right now. And when I'm finished, it should show me, and there it is, that the dialogue hasn't changed, obviously, but the true peak is within the target level. If it's blue, that means it's within the target level. If it's yellow, that means you're right there within tolerance. And -27.1 is within tolerance, so this is good to go. And I now can export this out knowing that the levels are sound and ready to share with somebody else. I'm going to just right click on this, bounce clip to file. We'll use the clip name and bounce, and it's done. So I just sent that out. Not only did I generate that from a master file, but I also set it to the loudness standard I needed to, verified it, and now I've just bounced that out to my desktop. So that is, just working with one master file. Now, a few other things that we can do, let me go ahead and show all these tracks again, is let's say I've synced my clips, I've been able to watch these. And by the way, you can also do playback on the edit page. If you happen to be over here working on something, you can be playing back a Dolby Atmos master file and even sync it right here on the edit page as well, or any of the other pages that you may be working on within DaVinci Resolve. You can now play back your master files. But what about exporting? I'd like to actually export this file, right? So one of the things we could do is just go into the Deliver page. And if you go over to the Deliver page, you have two choices when you're exporting your master files. You can export them as an audio-only ADM, which is a master file, and that's going to be a broadcast wave format. Or you can also do it as part of an IMF package, which would be as an IMF IAB file. And I'll just show you where those two options are right here in the Deliver page. If I scroll all the way down to our presets, we'll start with the audio-only option. And if I click where it says audio only, you're going to notice that this is where I can have my different choices of setting this up. And what I'm going to do is come down here and just show you. Right now it's a QuickTime format. I want to switch it to wave format. And also the codec, what I'm looking for is an ADM broadcast wave file. And there it is. Once I choose that, as long as I have a track that matches that, I'll be able to get a Dolby Atmos master right out of there. Any of the tracks that might be set to a standard channel format and not a Dolby Atmos format will just output as a flattened channel-based clip. And so that's your choices. So it all is dependent on what your tracks are set up to. So if we look down here at the bottom, I notice I do have several tracks. So if I'm looking at my different timeline tracks, my first track was stereo. Right? What was my second track? My second track was a 5.1. third track is stereo, and the fourth track is 5.1 because we had the different down mixes. So it's not actually seeing a Dolby Atmos master format at this time, Dolby Atmos format. So that's one thing that I'm going to have to actually change if I want to export it out in Dolby Atmos. So I'm going to go back to the Fairlight page. I'll go back to the original Dolby Atmos master because that's the only master file here in my timeline. And I'm going to change the format of the track back to a Dolby Atmos format. As you can see, you have several to choose from. I'll go ahead and make it a 714. So the track is 714, but the clip isn't yet. So we need to do that as well. Go back to clip attributes, and I'll set this to a Dolby Atmos 714 format. And as soon as I do that, now when I go back to the deliver page, if I look, now that if I go back to track 2, you'll see now it's recognizing my Dolby Atmos file right there. And so that one I can actually export out as a master file. So I can choose an individual track and export that out right now. I can add that to the render queue and I will export it to wherever I choose. So that's one way of exporting a master file. And then the other option we have is, as I mentioned, if we come over here, IMF packaging right here. Inside your IMF packaging, we even have a couple of presets for Disney and Netflix. Again, since I started with a Netflix example, let's say we chose Netflix preset. That would already have the video presets set up, and here's your audio presets, and a couple of different options that you have here when you're exporting as an IMF IAB, and that is you can export what we're doing right now, which is that file, the master file. And keep in mind, whenever you bring in a master file into DaVinci Resolve, we're not actually changing it. We're not going through there and editing it. We're not making any differences. You may be able to trim the ends. You can sync it. You can move its position. But you're not doing anything else to that file. You're maintaining the integrity all the way through. And so if you come down here and if you take a look, you'll see that track 2 has the master file, as you can see. If I switch to a different track, it's not going to see that or give me that option. Now, if you look at this output track pop-up menu here, you'll see that it says timeline track, but I could also choose to go down there and choose the IAB track file instead. So DaVinci Resolve is certified, Dolby certified for home theater, Dolby Atmos work, obviously, so you can make masters for home theater. But let's say you're working with a cinema master that's been certified as a cinema master and you're running it through DaVinci Resolve. It's not going to make any changes to that file. It will maintain its integrity all the way through. However, one of the things you can do is you can choose IAB track file instead. And if you do that, it's basically just doing a direct copy from that file into the IMF package. So those are a couple of different options you have. And there you go. So that is ways that you can export it, again, as an ADM file, audio only, or in an IMF package. Now, let's go back to the Fairlight page. So that is just working with a file that was already created. But there's something else that we can do is you can even import a master file. And when you import it, it's going to expand and show you all of the different tracks. You'll see all of the objects, their panning metadata that stays with those, as well as you'll see your bed busing and so on. So let me just show you the entire thing. Let's unpack this exact same master. So we're going to come over here. I'm going to make a new bin for it because it's going to populate it with a lot of information. So I'll just put the imported file just so we can see what we're looking at. And I'm also going to change this to icon view because it's a little more interesting to look at. If I want to import it, rather than importing right here from the media pool, which is what we did before, we're going to import through the Fairlight menu. So let's go up to the Fairlight menu. In the Fairlight menu, we have an entire immersive audio tool set, and what we're going to choose is import master file. If you import the master file using this method, you'll actually get the entire thing, all the content, the objects, the metadata, everything. So here we go, importing it. It's on my desktop in this folder. There it is. It's just that broadcast wave file, the ADM. I'm going to click open and give it a second, and what you'll see is it's created a brand new timeline. It's got a single bed mix. Whatever the naming convention was on all of the tracks when the master file was created, I will have all of that here. Any groups that were made will become VCA groups. And there it is. Here is my master file ready to go. And as you can see, there's all of those different tracks. Look at that. And because this is a demo project, it's actually utilizing all of the available tracks that you can use. When you're working with a Dolby Atmos master or Dolby Atmos project, you can have up to 128 channels. 118 of those can be flying objects or different objects, and the first 10 are reserved for using on your beds. And the beds is going to be more of your standard channels, your flattened channels that would be going to the fixed speakers. And then all of those other object channels are what are assigned to the overhead speakers, whether you have 2 or 4. And those are what's going to give you the illusion of the sound moving through space in all directions. And so that's the difference. If you look, let's go ahead and up here at the top, you notice here's in my monitoring panel, you'll see there's all of those different tracks up there. If I double click on this metering area, you'll see that it'll now show me more channels at once, which is great when I'm watching this. Also, I no longer need to look at my media pool, but you can see there it's showing me all of the different clips that it generated just from that master file. And I'll go ahead and hide this for a minute and we can play a little bit of it back. Now, one of the things you'll notice
with pinpoint accuracy.
There it is. If I play it back, I don't have any video to go with this, which is a shame because the video is pretty cool, right? So how do I go get the video? I'm going to go back to the media pool. I have to actually go back to master. There it is. Here's the video clip, but the thing is, the video has stereo audio in it. So if I go to drag this in, the audio is going to come with it and cover up my first 2 channels, which I don't want to do. So I'm actually going to go to the edit page for this maneuver. We'll go to the edit page. Make sure that I can see all of my tracks. There they are. And I'm going to come up to this video clip and just open it in the edit page. And when I do that, over here on the source side, anytime you put a video clip with both video and audio into your source viewer, you will see that you'll get these 2 overlays. One of them, let me just zoom in a little more so you can see it. This overlay is for video only editing. This will be for audio only. And if I grab from anywhere else, I'm going to get both at the same time. And so what we'll do is I will just grab the video only from that clip and drop it right onto the timeline. There it is. And while I'm there, I'm going to look at the end and make sure that I snap that into position so it's in sync. And I can go back to the Fairlight page just like that. And so now I will have video to go with the sound.
This is Dolby Atmos.
Okay, and there we go. Now, a couple of things. Whenever you import a master file, you'll notice that automation is turned on. And if I were to expand my mixer, you'll notice that the mixer, all of those faders are green. That means they all have automation applied to them, and the automation is locked. Again, we're not going in there making any changes. We can create our own original content, but at this moment, what we're doing is we're working with a master file, so we're not changing it. If I needed to adjust the volume level for any reason, if I needed to lower something, and in this case, all of the different object files are broken up into 3 parts. Just like your 3 stems, we have dialogue objects. As you can see, I'll just zoom in on that. Show you, we have our dialogue objects, which you can see those are named as such. And then we have music objects, and then further down, we have our effects objects. And so each one of those, and they were named before the Dolby Atmos master was created. And as you can see, that's also in my track name. And we have groups for those. I'm going to go ahead and peel open my mixer and just show you what we have. When we're looking in the mixer at our busing, once we brought this in, you see 1 bus. And this is this is my composite bus, which is basically our bed. Okay, that's showing you your flattened bed right here. If I pull this open a little bit more, you'll see it's a 712 format. It's what that one happens to be. It's whatever it was when it was created. And then if I look over here, I will see VCA groups. Okay, so these are VCA groups which were created ahead of time before the master file was created, and those VCA groups can be used to group together the different faders. In this case, we have a dialogue group. Here's our music group and effects. If I want to grab these music faders, notice I can't lower these down one at a time. However, I could grab that VCA if I needed to and say, I just need to lower the music a bit. I can do that for all of those at once if needed. You know, because the standards might have changed wherever I happen to be outputting this, I could actually adjust those together as a group. And so that's what those VCAs are useful for. As you can see, there they are. And all of this was done ahead of time And all this just translated when I imported the master file. Now, a couple of things. Let's look at our timeline again. I'm going to go ahead and hide the media pool. Don't need to see that. And if I'm looking at this, I had mentioned a couple of times that all of the metadata for panning is also built in. And you can see that very clearly in the panner. So I'm going to just scroll down here to where the effects, where we start getting into the effects objects. If you look right across these panners, zoom in a little bit. While I play back, you'll see these moving around because that's where the automation has been applied. I can even open up these pan windows right here for individual tracks. And so then I'd be able to see the automation for that specific track. And if you were generating your own content, this is where you could record the automation for those. All of the different movements, you can do it by mousing these, or if you're using a console and you can be dialing them in and recording that information. I'll close this up for a second and let's look and see if we can see some of that movement I was just talking about. I'm just going to play this for a second.
Cinematic audio.
See how the panners are moving?
Moving audio that transcends from channels.
See how that's moving around?
Moving around you.
So you can see that data right there. This is on Effects Object 2. Let me go to that, go down to that track. Let's select that track. So there it is, Effects Object 2. But watch, I can also change by just holding Option, Command, and down arrow. I can move to the next track, and I can switch between these different tracks and see them just load a different track at a time during playback.
With pinpoint accuracy.
And then the other thing I can do, let me pause that. I'm going to go and close this window for a minute, is we can actually see the curve as well if that's what I want to see. So I'm going to go ahead and select some of these tracks. Let's go to these effects objects. I'm going to select a handful of these tracks, and let's say I want to expand that just a little bit more so I can really see it. And what I want to see is those curves. And so if you look right here on the left-hand side of any track, you'll see when automation's turned on, you can choose which curve you want to look at. If you're on one of our consoles, you can actually select all your tracks at once. You can hold down the curve button, touch any parameter, and it'll automatically show that curve. In this case, I'm just using mouse and keyboard, so I can manually set it. So I'd like to see the pan curve, the left and right curve. There it is. I can also go to pan. There's my front back, and here is my up down. So I could look at any of those curves. I think I'll just show the left right on this particular one. There it is. And let's show left and right on this one as well. I'll go down to this one and let's do front back. As you can see, any of those curves, it just depends on how the automation was created, but there are 4 tracks with some nice active automation applied. There we go. And something else I want to do is now let's focus on those tracks. And as I play those back, I'll select one. By selecting a track, I can automatically see which track it is, which makes it easier for me to open this up and watch it during playback. You know, if there's anything happening at that time on that particular track, I can see it.
With powerful moving
in the automation.
Audio that transcends
there
from
we go.
channels.
You can see it moving right there. And that's individual tracks. But another thing that we can do instead of the individual tracks is we can see them all at once using our Space View scope. So let's go up to the Fairlight menu, down to our immersive audio tools, and choose Space View Scope. And when you open up the Space View Scope, that's going to allow you to see all 118 flying objects if you have that many. It's rare for people to use that many, but again, this is a demo project, so of course we did, right? So there we go. This is my Space View Scope. And if you look, you'll see the purple icons. Those are going to be the channels. Those are the fixed channels. That's from our bed. And then you'll also see all of these different green elements are our objects. And so if I start playback,
with pinpoint accuracy,
you'll see there they are. I'm going to actually mute my playback for a minute just so you can see these objects flying around. And this really allows you, whenever you're working with the Space View Scope, you can actually see the relationship between the objects and the room as well as each other, which is very helpful. I'm going to go back to those 4 tracks that I was working with. I'm just going to go to all 4 of those, and I'm going to solo them by just swiping down on solo. And now I'll only see those particular objects flying around, so I can really watch only their automation, as you can see. And I can even change the color of those tracks. Right-click and choose Change Track Color. This time I'll make it orange. And that way I can really track it, see what happens to it as we go. Right now they all are acting as one object, but they're about to split up into several different ones. And if I unsolo this, all of a sudden we're going to see those orange objects within the other objects as well. So it's just another way of working with this. And one thing about the Space View scope is if you have a separate screen, you can move it over to the other screen. You can also resize it to better match whatever room you're working in. There you go. But it always gives you a really nice representation of what's actually happening with those objects as you go. So that is our Space View scope, and this is just a way of, kind of monitoring things. You can also use it, it's very handy if you're creating your own content as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close up my panning. I can deselect those tracks and kind of bring this back. So that is just watching the metadata, that is looking at the mixer. Let's go back to this composite bed. Okay. And as you can see, there's my 712 bed, which is right here at the beginning. There it is. If I open up the pan window for that, you'll see that's what it looks like. Right there, that is what all of the different channels are in the exact position where they need to be. All of them are on their target. This is 712, so you only have 2 overheads. If we had 714, you would see 4 overheads and they would be on these targets in front of me. Now that you've kind of seen this, I'm going to show you how you can actually set up and create your own content. But first, I need to actually show you how to export right from the timeline your master file. So let's come up here to the top into the Fairlight menu again, go to Immersive Audio. Obviously, you can import your master file, but you can also export your master file from right at this position. And if I do that, it will take on the timeline name or a name plus a tag. So you would want to make sure you had a good name for that one. And you can come over here and choose the format. And as you can see, you can do either an ADM broadcast wave file or an IMF IAB file. So either way, you can actually take care of that right from within the Fairlight page and never actually leave that. So one more time, if you needed to export, you just go to the Immersive Audio Export Master File, and there are your choices. ADM broadcast wave and IMF IAB. I haven't changed the way I'm monitoring this. As soon as I bring it in, it's automatically set to 714, as you can see. I'm going to make my viewer a little bit bigger here, because I can. And if you look on here in the right corner, underneath the viewer, this is where you're going to see where you can change your playback format at any time. Earlier, when I just brought in a file to the timeline, we had to right-click and change the attributes to change how it was playing back. Well, in this case, we can change it live during playback just by switching the format, and we can do that right here. So these are all of the formats that are from the Dolby Atmos render that we can switch to right away, including our channel-based formats. So I could start this playing back. I'm going to dim my playback so it's lower, and I can start playback right now. So it's playing at 714. Clearly, I don't have 714 speakers set up here. I could switch this instantly to stereo and now listen to it in stereo automatically, or 514 Dolby Atmos, 7.1. So I could make any of those changes during playback by just changing this particular menu to either standard channel-based format or to a Dolby Atmos format right here. If I'm using a non-standard format, I could go down to native and work with that instead. And that's just a native Dolby Atmos busing within Fairlight. Now, a couple of other choices that we have before I finish off this section is I also want to show you where the renderer settings are in case you're doing down mixes and you want to just adjust a little bit how those are working. Back up to the Fairlight menu, down to Immersive Tools, and at the very bottom of the Immersive Tools, you'll see the renderer settings. And those renderer settings, what those will do is this will bring up the down mixing controls. And so if you happen to be down mixing to, let's say, stereo, and you want to make some adjustments to that, or 5.1, this will allow you to kind of trim your surrounds and your height, because if this was a theatrical master set up for a much wider speaker array, and you may want to trim that back if it's going to be playing in a living room. And so you might adjust some of that right here if you need to. Although recommendation, if you don't need to make any adjustments, just go with automatic, and then you'll be using all of the same algorithms that are in the Dolby Atmos renderer for your down mixing. So those controls are right here. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that. And that is basically how you can work with these and export them right from within the DaVinci Resolve Fairlight page. Now, the last thing I want to show you is just for setting up your own projects. So what we'll do is I'd like to come down and just going to open up another project real quickly. There it is. Okay, so this particular project doesn't look all that exciting, not as exciting, but all I have is just some tone that is in all these different channels. And basically what I did is set this up as a 714. Now, if you're wondering what is 714, 7 would be the standard surround channels, obviously. The 1 is going to be for your subwoofer, your LFE, and then the 4 is how many overheads. So if it's 2, that would be 2 overhead speakers. If it's 4, it's going to be 4 overhead speakers. So in this case, I'm going to go with the full 714. First thing I want to do is though reset my UI layout. So I'm going to go down here to reset layout in the workspace menu, just kind of neaten things up. And here we just have tone, and it's in all these different tracks. And I've named the tracks whatever the channel configuration is for a 714, just so you can see what those are. This would be standard channel configurations. However, at the bottom, you will see LTF for the left top front, right top front, left top rear, and right top rear. And so those are the 4 overheads. Now, if I want to patch these so that I can actually set this up, create a master file, or test this on my own speaker system to make sure it is working, everything is set up correctly, then I need to understand how it works. A couple of things you need to know when you're working with, and these are rules for working with Dolby Atmos, is that if you have an LFE channel, low frequency effects, those need to go through your bed. Okay, the bed mix, that's your standard channel base. That is where you're going to get those LFE effects. You won't get your LFE. None of those effects are going to be on your objects. The flying objects are for the overheads. And then the other thing is that your tracks, your individual tracks, are going to feed the overheads. Those are going to feed the overhead objects, while buses, you need a bus in order to feed a bed track. So at this moment, if you look at what I have, for my busing, I have those tracks, but if I look at my busing, I have 2 buses here. One is unassigned, just it's called master, and the second one is a 7-1 bed, okay? And so I need both of those in order to make this work. And as I mentioned, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna assign the first 8 channels, just as if this was a 7-1 mix. I'm gonna assign those first 8 channels to a bed. And that's this one right here. And then the bed I assign to the master. And so let me just show you how that works. Notice also that all the panning at this moment is set to center. So if I were to play these, and let me just mute that because no one needs to hear all that beeping. If I play this, you'll see that all of these are playing out of the exact same channel and only that channel on my metering, because all the panning is set to center. So we need to change that as well. Now, one of the really cool tricks that you can do in the Fairlight page is if you select, you don't even have to select your tracks. I can select however many I need to of mono tracks, and I can link them together, and it will automatically pan them as that format. Let me just show you. In the Fairlight menu, go to Link Group. And when you go to Link Group, it will show every mono channel or mono track that you have in your project. And at this moment, I'd like to select them all. So I'm just going to select the first one to the last one. And as soon as I do that, notice it automatically assumes that this is a Dolby Atmos 714. And let me deselect all these for a second and only select the first 2. Notice now, if I were to link that, it's going to assume it's stereo. If I do 6 channels, it's going to assume that it's a 5-1 and so on. So it always looks at the number of channels and guesses what it is you're asking for. In this case, like I said, I'll do all of these, and there's only one option for that many channels, and that will be my 714. So I will say link those together. When I do that, you'll see a band on the left-hand side, which shows that these are all linked together. You will also see the same band across the top of my monitoring panel. And if you look at your mixer, it's only giving me 1 track. All of those are being assigned to a single track with a single fader. I can open this up and you'll notice that it is dead on. Everything is panned exactly to the targets, including the 4 overheads for a 714 output, which is awesome. That's exactly what I wanted. Problem is, I don't want them all in 1 track. I want to make sure that they're spread out. And so just go up and unlink them. So I'll go back to the link group, select them again, and unlink them. And one of the benefits is now they're back to single tracks. However, every single one of them has now been panned exactly where it needs to be for my output. And in fact, if I double click this and open it up, you'll see my tracks, and it shows exactly where they're panned to. And if I select a track and just move down through them, you'll see the panning in each target is exactly where it needs to be. And that's just showing you the pan position for each of those tracks. So all of that was done very quickly. All right, so the last step is we'll go to bus assign, and I've unassigned all of those tracks, as you can see. And so now there's no sound going out to either of our buses. And so the last thing we have to do is just assign the first 8 channels have to go to my bed, and then the bed will go to the master. And that way this will play back perfectly. So let's start up here. I'm going to choose the out for my bed, and I'm going to grab all 8 of those first channels, and those are now going to bus 2, which is the bus 2 output, which is the bed. Then I'm going to select the master out, and I'm going to set all 4 of my overheads to that master out, and I'm also sending the bed bus to the master out as well. So I will select that. So everything else feeds the master. And by doing it that way, the channels should all feed perfectly. And let's just see how it works. I'm going to go ahead and go to the Fairlight menu, Immersive Audio, and I'm going to export this master file. And we'll just make it an ADM broadcast wave file, export. It will be called, let's give our timeline a name so it's a little bit better than timeline 1. We'll call it master ident for identifying our tracks. Test, there we go. And so now that I've changed the name, I will go back up to the Fairlight menu, Immersive Audio Export Master File, and we will export that right to the desktop and save. Oh, last thing, the good thing about this is if you ever miss something, it's going to tell you. So in this case, I need to set an in point and an out point, and now I'll go in there and export that master file. Let's try this, take 2, and go. It's going to export it and save as soon as I'm finished. There we go. I can bring that master file in. I'll import media. And if I import from the desktop, here's the master file I just created. I've just brought it into the timeline. If you notice up here in my preview player, there are all the channels just as expected. And there are my 4 overheads exactly as they should be. So all of that is a success. I can even go in here and import that file, import master file, and let's see if the results that way. Go to the desktop. Here's my file that I just created, open, and it should create it. There it is. And as you can see, it's given me a 7.1. There's my 7.1. As you can see, that's all of those bed tracks, and there are my different overheads. So in a nutshell, this is how you can get through working with a Dolby Atmos project right here in DaVinci Resolve. So whether you're just playing it back or you're creating original content, you have all the tools you need right here on the Fairlight page in DaVinci Resolve 17, DaVinci Resolve Studio. So thank you for watching.